Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Spreadex Sports live webinar on how to spread bet in horse racing. So today we're going to hope to explain a little bit more about how spread betting works. We'll talk through some examples of different horse racing spread bets, answer some questions which we've had sent in. So a little introduction. So my name's Andy McKenzie. I'm head of marketing at Spreadex. Been here about 15 years now, and with me, senior horse racing trader James McFadden.
Hello.
Been here even longer than me.
Yeah, a little bit longer, 16 years, I think.
Yeah. So hopefully we can help you through with some different questions on horse racing and spread betting. The first thing I want to say is we're recording the this webinar, so hopefully that's okay with everyone. And also I've got to explain, do some housekeeping with risk warnings. So I need to explain that when it comes to spread betting, Spreadex is authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority, and that spread betting carries a high level of risk to your capital and can result in losses larger than your initial stake. It may not be suitable for everyone, so please ensure you fully understand the risks involved. However, many of our horse racing markets, spread betting markets, are designed to have maximum makeups, which means that you can kind of control your risk, which we'll go into in a bit more detail. So before I hand over to James to explain some more on our spread betting markets, I'll quickly highlight some of the main differences. So if I jump to the next screen here, between spread betting and sort of sportsbook or fixed odds betting. So first of all, there's many different markets you can bet on with spread betting, and James will talk through some of these popular markets in a moment, but they give you lots of different ways to bet. So for example, you can with a fixed odds bet, often the bet's over, or there's a winner or a loser. With spread betting, you can be in that bet for much longer. There's bets over kind of the whole meeting, the whole day, even though over the whole 4 days. And also, if you go onto the race index, even if your horse doesn't win, you could still end up winning if you've bought at a lower price. Again, we'll explain in more detail how that works. With fixed odds betting, the main thing to realise is that you put a stake down on a horse. So it might be a 3-to-1 shot. If that horse wins, you're going to win £30 plus your stake back, so you'd win £40. And if your horse loses, you'd lose £10. So it's quite straightforward in that sense. With spread betting, the more right you are, the more you can win. But then you also have to remember that if you get the bet wrong, the more you can lose. So spread betting, it does mean that you can actually lose more than your initial stake size, and you can actually lose more than your funds in your account. So we'll go through that more in detail, and we'll show you ways of how to manage your risk as well. But for now, I'll hand over to James. You can give us some live examples of some spread bets from last year's Cheltenham Festival and talk through some more of the markets.
Right, thanks, Andy. Yeah, I'd almost say really with spread betting, the difference with that compared to fixed odds betting is there are different degrees of winning and losing. So there are makeups in between for example, on an index bet, we would have that we can see on screen now. This is a 50, 25, 10, 0 index. So there's different degrees of that you can win and also lose. I think was there another slide with maybe it's moved on. Oh yeah. Well, I think we'll just run through this first just to give you outline different types of markets that we offer, and then we'll move back to that example there. That was an example of a race index bet, which is probably our most popular spread betting market. It's kind of the main alternative to a traditional fixed odds bet. The race index allows you to get with or bet against any horse in a race. We'll go back to that just after I run through a few more of the things that we offer. We also offer card markets, which allow you to have a bet throughout a whole meeting. Some of the most popular of these are starting prices, favourites, winning distances. We also offer jockey indices. So for today at Cheltenham, we've got Paul Townend, Rachel Blackmore, Nico de Boinville, Aidan Coleman. So we have a number of those each day. We can just highlight some of those here and what their prices would be. One of the advantages of the daily markets as well is the prices are updated after each race. So the quotes will change, allowing you to open a trade or close a trade depending on what results have been. Whilst the race is in progress, those markets are suspended, but once the result's known, prices will update depending on results. So you're able to close positions, open new positions, and sort of play throughout the meeting, as well as those giving you an interest throughout the card. So that they're a good bet for giving you an interest throughout a meeting, really. We also offer match bets, and that is how one horse will perform against another or against the field. Today at Cheltenham, we've got 3 or 4 match bets in each race. They're determined by us, the match bets. We will choose them, and then you can decide how you'd like to play. For example, we've got Constitution Hill against the field in the Champion Hurdle, State Man against Vauban. And in terms of jump racing, those markets settle at a maximum of 15 lengths. So you know what you can win or lose in terms of that market, because there's a maximum makeup of 15 either way to either horse. Right, I think, should we go back to the index example now? Okay. Right, this was actually a race from last year at Cheltenham. It was the Turner's Novice Chase. We had Galopin de Champ, who was the 5 to 6 favourite with the fixed odds bookies, or in the fixed odds market rather. And with Spreadex, it was 34 to 37 on our race index. So how that race index works is the horse that wins the race receives 50 points, horse that comes second 25, 10 points for third, and then 0 points if outside the top 3. So that includes a horse not completing the course. So for example, a £1 sell of Galopin de Champ, which would have been at 34, would have returned a £34 profit. So that's 34 minus the 0 for him falling at the last fence, so not completing the course. So 34 minus 0 times the pound stake, so a £34 profit. Now, if Galopin de Champ hadn't fallen and won the race, the sell at 34 would have lost £16. So 34 that was sold at minus the 50 makeup for winning the race times a pound, so a £16 loss. That race is quite a good example of where spread betting can be a bit more interesting than maybe a fixed odds bet, because a race like that where there were only 4 runners, traditionally a fixed odds market would only really be a win-only market, or you might have a betting without the favourite market. So it offers a bit more variety or interest than you might have traditionally. So that's quite a good example of something that's a little bit different with spread betting.
And we also have the 50, 30, 20, 10 index for 12 runners or more.
We do, yeah.
And there's features on the website here. If you go to the Get Started section, and I'll copy this into the chat as well, where you can actually go into our interactive calculator here, and you can choose some different markets. But the race index here gives you an idea that it puts a theoretic spread here of 15 to 18, which is roughly about a 4 to 1 shot, we'd probably say.
4 to 1, 9 to 2, yeah. Just to pick an example of a horse today in the first race, the Supreme Novice, I think Ilate Tomp is 15, 18 or maybe 16, 19. So that'd be a horse that's around that level. And then you can work through that calculator and see for a £1 stake exactly what you'd be winning or losing if you're buying or selling.
So this is on a buy bet here that if the horse came first, you'd win 32 times. This is on a pound, buying at 18. So if it finished second, you'd win £12 because it's only going to make up at 30, from your 18 buy. You'd still be a small winner if it came third, because you'd make £2 here because it's going to get 20 points. So it's a 2-point difference from your 18 buy. And then if it finishes outside the top 3, if it's finishing fourth here, it's going to get 10 points. So this is when you start to lose more than your stake. So you lose £8 because you're losing 8 times your stake. And then if it's outside of the top 4, you make up at 0, you've lost £18. And on the opposite side, if you were to sell at 15 and it came outside the top 4, you'd actually win £15 here. If it came fourth, you're still going to win £5 because it's got 10 points. And that's the 5-point difference from your sell at 15. And this is when you start to lose here. So if it did finish third and you've sold at 15, you've lost 5 times your stake, so £5 in this instance. If it's second, you're losing £15. If it wins the race, you've lost 35. And obviously remember that if you up your stake levels here, consequently your wins or losses will be magnified. So it's always very important to make sure you're staking the right levels that you're comfortable with. And I think we're going to move on. Should we move on to some questions we've had sent in, and then we'll open up the mics for questions from anyone on here. So quickly, we've had a couple sent in. So one question we've had was, how can people limit their risk when placing a spread bet? Which bets can be placed where customers can work out the downside? I suppose we can. This is a good example of it here.
Yeah. A race index is a good example of that, because you know all the possible outcomes before the event, so you can calculate exactly what your maximum win and loss would be. There are some other markets where that isn't quite so certain, but yeah, indices
and distances, I guess, similarly. You could here's an example. Let's say that.
Yeah. Well, today's price actually at Cheltenham looked like being that a few days ago, but we've had a bit more rain, so the ground's a bit softer. So I think we're now 31.34, but we'll maybe, just to keep things simple, we'll pretend it's 26.29. So yeah, if for example they're 7 dead heats today, which is obviously probably about 1 billion to 1, but the market would make up at 0. So if you bought at 29, you'd be losing £29. Obviously, it can make up anywhere in between that and that. I mean, if let's say Constitution Hill wins by half the track, and we get a few other big distances, and we get a makeup of 100, which I think would probably be more than I've ever seen, certainly, but you never know. You'd be winning £71 in that example.
Yeah,
so at least you know your maximum downside if you're buying at 29.
If you sell, it could
for
be
a pound. For a sell, it isn't quite so certain. So when you're buying a market with a maximum downside of 0, you always know what the worst case scenario is, really.
So you can work out your stake size accordingly.
Yeah.
We've had some other questions. Another question here is why there's so many questions to answer on the application form when you either open a full spread betting account or upgrade from a fixed odds to spreads account. So the reason for this is that, as we mentioned before, for spread betting, we're regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority, and as part of that regulation, there's a lot more information that we by law, we have to obtain from customers. So, for example, employment status and levels of savings. But these are questions that obviously would never be passed on to any third party or your employer. And they're just things that we have to do from a regulatory point of view. Also, we have to check that spread betting is appropriate for everyone, as we've seen here, that you can lose more than your stake. So there are questions that people have to answer as well. So that's making sure that the product is appropriate. So that's just some of the reasons why there's more questions than you'd get, for example, from opening a fixed odds betting account. Another question we've had is, are there any additional or special markets for Cheltenham, which I think we've got?
Yeah, we can probably show you some of those. We've got markets for the whole meeting, so for all 28 races,
which are down here, I think.
Yeah, should be there, I think. Yeah, so we've got a lot of those are the same as the card markets we would do on a daily basis, but they're for the entire meeting. So we're offering quite a few different things that we do just as a special for Cheltenham, really. In addition to that, for any race with more than 16 runners, we have a super index. So it's kind of a souped up race index, really. Yeah, if you look at the 250, there should be one. And I think the 450 is the other one. So the Ultima we've got.
Just the super index.
Yeah, the super index. So the scoring system for that, 100 points for the winner, 60 for second, 30 for third, 20 for fourth, 10 for fifth, and then 5 points for sixth. So you've got a payout all the way down to sixth place. So that's something that we offer for some of the better races with bigger fields. So we've got, I think, 2 of the races we're offering that today.
Okay. Another question we've had in here is, how do we find out more information on each market and find out the maximum minimum makeups? So when you go onto either the mobile app or onto the desktop, there's lots of these little I buttons here. And if you hover over an I button next to any market, it will give you a kind of very brief description to explain a bit more. So, for example, favourites in every race, that the favourite wins, they'll get 25 points. If the favourite finishes second, they get 10 points. if they finish third, they get 5 points, and obviously outside the top 3 would be no points, and then that score is added up over the races in the day. So for example, here the spread would be 81 to 85. So you'd need a certain number of favourites to come in, and then you'd start winning if you were to buy 85. Obviously, if you didn't fancy the favourites at all and you thought they weren't going to do very well, you might sell at 81. But these I buttons here give you a description of all the different markets, how they work. Here's the jockey index. So it's very useful to go.
That scoring system is the same for favourites as it is for the jockeys, and a number of the markets actually, like Racing Post favourites, number ones, Spotlight Verdicts. A lot of them use the 25, 10, 5 for first, second, third, and 0 for worse than third.
And the other thing you can do is you can go to this Get Started section here, which I did say I'd drop this into the chat, which I'll do so. And then in here, there's lots of different areas of answering questions on all the different markets here, the race indices, favourites, winning distances, card markets, and so forth. So I think we've probably spoken enough. So let me try and unmute everyone, if I can figure out how to do this.
Yeah.
Let's stop sharing here, and let's go to here. How do we unmute? In fact, I think you can unmute yourselves if you want to ask any questions.
Might be best, yeah.
Or we can drop something into the chat if you had a question in the chat. Let me drop the link in here. So that's the link to the Get Started section if anyone wanted to look at that. As I say, we've answered a few questions you've had sent in. Feel free to, we'll give a couple of minutes here if you wanted to unmute to ask anything in particular, if there might be certain things that you never understood about spread betting, or things that you wanted to find out more information on. We can obviously help you out, or feel free to email into Spreadex, which is the best option is info@spreadex.com.
Yeah.
We've also got live chat where there's lots of people ready to answer any questions. It's going to be extremely busy for them as well the next few days, which they do a great job.
Can you do fixed odds as well, Spreadex?
Yes. Thank you for the question. Certainly can. So I'll show you. I'll share the screen again, and I'll show you that. So within our site, we'll go to the racing section. You might have noticed that, again, mobile site or desktop, you've got these little tabs here. So when we were looking at, like, let's say, the big one today, and we were looking at Constitution Hill, if we sort here, but that's the you can see very big favourite, 39 to 42 on the race index. If you flick here to the fixed odds, you then get an idea of how that relates to our traditional sportsbook fixed odds prices. So Constitution Hill here.
We've also got a new market that we've recently just introduced called Lengthen the Odds, which is probably quite an interesting one for Constitution Hill. So we've got all different options from 3 lengths up to 20 lengths of it winning by over those distances and the price for it to do so. So you've got an option of kind of boosting your odds to some extent by playing those markets. That's something we've recently introduced to our fixed odds offering. So we're doing that for every race, for every horse now. And
you can bet without the favourite, can't you? And place only.
Yeah.
So all the usual kind of options. There's also live streaming, which is worth mentioning. All UK and Irish races are live streamed, if I'm not mistaken. But you can see any one with this little play arrow next to all the markets on any meeting will be available for live streaming as well. And if we have any other questions at all? If we don't have any more, I think we'll all start looking at getting ready for the first, which is in just over an hour.
Yeah, I need to get back down, really.
We're keeping James.
Yeah.
But we thank everyone for joining us, and I hope that's been useful. And like we say, if any further questions do pop up afterwards, feel free to email into us, get into the live chat. There's always people here to help and explain how the markets work, because obviously once you know how they work, it can be a very entertaining and interesting pastime once you've got your head around how all the the different levels work and buying and selling at the right amount for each market. But I hope that's helped.
Thanks very much.